an all-time awesome feud ender, an all-time awesome cage match, and an all-time awful main event. I'm Luke Owen, your forever Jam That Champion, and this is my review of AEW Revolution 2025 in about 10 or so minutes.
Support WrestleTalk!
The show kicked off in a massive way as MJF took on Hangman Page in a sorry about that Jeff Jarrett feud match. It is wild to me that these two have only had one singles match in the history of AEW, and it was right at the start when MJF won his first diamond ring. It shows how restrained this company can be with matchups like this, which makes them feel all the more special. And these characters are far more interesting now than they were when they faced off the first time. And those interesting characters came into focus at the end of the match as MJF grabbed Hangman by the hair and asked two simple questions. Why you and not me? What's so special about you? It's those insecurities of Max that led to his downfall as Hangman reversed the Heat Seeker into a Deadeye and hit a wicked Angel's Wings and Buckshot for the win. A superb match and a great way to open Revolution. You know, maybe this should be the main event scene. Mercedes Moné retained her TBS championship over Momo Watanabe in a wonderfully hard-hitting match. At one point, Momo got her foe in the Tree of Woe and used her toes to strike Mercedes No, and it looked like she knocked out some of her teeth with one of her other stiff kicks, but Mercedes managed to hit the Monet Maker and Statement Maker for the win. A very good match, but I am looking forward to a bigger challenge for Monet that doesn't feel like, well, a foregone conclusion. Speaking of awesome things, Swerve Strickland next took on Ricochet for the #1 contendership to the AEW World Championship. Swerve was unhinged at the start of this one, unloading on Ricochet so much that Prince Nana tried to get Swerve off of him, but Swerve shoved Nana away. It's not like he did it on purpose or with malice, but it was enough for Nana to think that it was enough, and he walked out of the match. These two really laid it into each other, and the action was awesome. Swerve's deadlift powerbomb into a power slam was incredible. Ricochet's 630 was picture perfect, and what felt like a variation of Homicide's cop killer on the Spanish announce table was awe-inspiring. Nana came back down to get his rope, but Ricochet grabbed them and put them on. Swerve tried to dive, but Ricochet caught him with a Death Valley driver and got in the face of Ken Young of all people. But it was Swerve who picked up the win after a series of near falls. Awesome stuff, and it's a good job that Swerve is the #1 contender, because it really feels like maybe this should be the main event scene. Kazuchika Okada retained his Continental Championship over local boy Brody King in a match that was just as tremendous as we figured it would be when you see the two names written down on paper. Okada's skin was red almost immediately from the chops and strikes from King, who is a beautiful brute of a beast. Okada resorted to his cheating ways as he got a steel chair to distract the referee so he could crack Brody with the belt, but it wasn't enough, and Brody reversed the Rainmaker with a lariat of his own, but Okada hit his gorgeous dropkick as King went for the cannonball and hit the Rainmaker for the win. This was exactly what it needed to be, but man, maybe Okada should be the main event scene. The highs of the pay-per-view were brought down a peg or two as the Hurt Syndicate defended the tag team championships against the Outrunners. It's nothing against Turbo Floyd or Truth Magnum, but it feels like we're about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months late to be capitalizing on their momentum. Like, this wasn't dreadful, but it also was a bit, I don't know, pointless? We had our fun early with the Outrunners, but then it was time for business as the Hurt Syndicate dominated and killed the Outrunners dead to retain. This tag division needs a shot in the arm, but I've been saying that since this time last year when Sting retired holding the titles. There was a lot of discussion in the week leading up to the event and over the weekend of what should close out Revolution, with many feeling it should be Toni Storm versus Mariah May, given that it's one of AEW's best stories of the last year and this was the final chapter. So it felt odd that it came so early in the night, which both shows the depths of big stars the company has, but also exposes that women in All Elite Wrestling will always have a ceiling. The match itself was as brutal as it was beautiful. Luther got taken out early and Storm hit a sky high off the stage through a table. May hit Storm 0 on the steps, which gave Toni some color, and boy howdy did she ever get some color. And then the pair of mad lads got a bucket of broken champagne bottles to do a smegging Taipei deathmatch spot. That was so awesome. Storm stabbed May with a shard of the bottle, but Mariah responded by stabbing Storm in the, well, there's kind of no better way to put this than to do this instead. At At this point, both women, but Toni Storm in particular, were a bloody mess. And then they got the thing that started all of this. The shoe! Storm stabbed May in the head at the top of the ramp and then hit a Storm Zero through a table. This was a feud ender, alright. They even had the end on the big screens. Legit, I don't know what both of these women do after this, but I hope that AEW actually capitalizes on what this feud has done for both of them. Give me a big title program for Toni Storm and another heated rivalry for Mariah May. Maybe this should have been the main event, because lesser wrestlers would struggle to get the crowd back after such an epic brawl. Thankfully, Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita are not lesser wrestlers. Kenny is just perfect, isn't he? Like, he's just perfect. I've loved the matches these two have had in the past, and this one was right up there with their previous outings. The crowd did start slow, but really got into it once they hit the halfway point and were with them until the very end, going nuts when Kenny Omega kicked out at 1 following a series of knee strikes by Takeshita. Omega's selling of his recovery from diverticulitis was just incredible, and Takeshita working over his midsection led to great drama of Omega struggling to hit the one-winged angel. Don Callis was superb in this match, constantly jumping up from the desk to check that Takeshita was okay or to cheat on his behalf. And he even blocked Omega setting up for his second one-winged angel attempt, but after a series of roll-up near falls, Omega got the win and is the new international champion. Like Kenny himself, this was perfect. It also sets up Okada versus Omega at All In July, hopefully to merge these two mid-card titles together. Because, you know, maybe this should be the main event scene. And bruv, then came Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher in a salad steel cage. Will is really bloody good at showing, not telling, or maybe telling by showing. Right off the bat, he did 3 spots that got over the steel cage stipulation and what it means for him as a wrestler. First, he couldn't do a springboard because the cage is too tight to the ring. Then, he couldn't do a handspring because he hit the sides of the cage while trying to do a flip, and then Fletcher rammed his head into the cage and he came up bleeding. He was now going to have to change up his entire game plan and meet Fletcher at his level of violence. And Fletcher is no slouch for the record, wearing the same boots and kick pads that he did when he turned on Will Ospreay, so his dried blood was still on there, with Callis saying on commentary they want to add more blood to the collection. And boy, did they get the blood they wanted! These two kicked the crap out of each other, using barbed wire, did the cinema drama of Fletcher slowing Will's intensity down by showing him the United Empire armband, and then they did a Spanish fly off the top of the cage. Absolutely insane. Hidden Blade by Will and a Tiger Driver 91, the move he only pulls out in dire scenarios to get the win. A superb match and capped off a perfect 3-match run for this pay-per-view. But if I may, AEW have been very good at protecting the cage stipulation and make it mean something after WWE under Vince McMahon made the cage mean sweet nothing in North American wrestling for about 3 decades. And I feel some of that was undermined when this cage match, a stipulation designed to not have interference, had a lot of blatant interference from Mark Davis. I get that he's a big part of the story and a part of the group, but like, it did take me out of the match a bit, but that aside, maybe this should have been the main event scene. And you know what? Why isn't it? Why aren't MJF, Hangman Page, Swerve Strickland, Ricochet, Okada, Kenny Omega, Konosuke Takeshita, Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher the main event scene? Oh, because these lads are. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. It can reveal that something you thought was the right move was actually the wrong one. And maybe with the benefit of hindsight, Tony Khan will see that closing out this show with Adam Copeland versus Jon Moxley in a heatless match with TNA levels of overbooking schmoz was the wrong move. But here's the thing. You didn't need the benefit of hindsight to see that was going to happen. So they had a boring match. Then there was a ref bump and a visual pin on Mox. Then Wheeler Yuta ran down and he chose to side with Mox rather than Cope. Then Jay White ran down and he took out Yuta, but then accidentally clocked Cope with the briefcase. Then Cope had the match won for a second time with a series of spears. Then Christian Cage pulled out the referee and then he cashed in his title shot. Then he hit Cope with a spear and Cope kicked out. Then he hit the Unprettier, but then Mox locked in the Bulldog choke, and then Christian Cage tried to pin Cope while he was in that Bulldog choke, and then he tapped out or he passed out due to that submission and Mox retained. I promised myself I would do that in one take, and I actually did. Thankfully, the actual closing of the show was Swerve Strickland standing tall as he dove off a balcony onto Jon Moxley. I woke up in a tremendous mood to watch this show. The sun was shining in the UK for the first time this year, which means I had my first barbecue of 2025. I went for my first 5K run in about 3 years, and I did it in 36 minutes, which I'm super proud of. I'm so unfit. I was in a good mood. And then the majority of this pay-per-view put me in an even better mood. Outrunners versus Hurt Syndicate side. This was a stellar show and among the best AEW has ever put on. But man, that main event was a dud. And sometimes it is how you leave them, folks. If you check online, this is all people are talking about. How bad this main event was. My worry is this will be the lasting memories of AEW Revolution 2025, that match, and that's a shame. It won't be mine, and I hope it won't be yours either. Now go and watch myself, Tempest, and special guest SP3 count down the best WrestleMania matches of all time. And yes, I didn't have Shawn and Taker on my list, but I literally explain why in the video.